what you can do with them, what you should not do with them. Yeah? And then I'm going to give you a little glimpse into what we are doing with them, building creative products to help research communities, and especially the publishing part of this. Okay? But before I proceed, I want to highlight the 5 core principles that we follow as human nature with anything that we do with AI. Dignity, respect, and minimizing harm to anyone in the process, fairness and equity, transparency, always declare it when we use artificial intelligence or generative AI or large language models, accountability, that the human is who is always accountable for the content that we are building. It's not the generative AI model that is responsible. Privacy and data governance, making sure that all the data have all the rules, there's privacy maintained for the content that we are providing to the LLM to build materials on. Yeah. Usually, I would ask the audience to define an LLM for me, but in the interest of time today, I'm just going to do it. This is one of my favorite definitions which I like to show people. There are many definitions of a large language model, but this comes from a particular blog post of one of the engineers at NVIDIA, and this is very succinctly defining what a large language model does. A large language model is a deep learning algorithm that can recognize, summarize, translate, predict, and generate text and other forms of content based on knowledge gained from massive data sets. Yeah. I want to focus on text, and then I want to focus on the language map, the word map I have here. This is based on a description of a large language model or generative AI. What are the words that stand out from descriptions of generative AI systems? You see the biggest word that stands out is language. Yeah. Then NLP. NLP is natural language processing, and this words, text. So this shows what the capability of the model is, what the people who create these models are describing them as. Yeah. The core capability of these models is linguistics. Large language models are the culmination of what computer scientists have been wanting to do for over 7 decades to make a computer that talks to us in our own language. Okay? And that was achieved by what we call generative AI models. But this is not the first time it has been achieved. Yeah? There have been many steps in between. Before you started seeing ChatGPT on your phones, there have been many steps in between to get here. One of the steps of a text predictive model, and a very simple example, those of you who have used the early phones or even a BlackBerry, yeah, when you texted, there were predictive words inside a text application. Yeah, that was one of the earliest forms of a text predictor. It was based on the statistical use of certain words in your texting. It was learning from a data set which was on your particular device. Yeah, so it was a very small data set. Now imagine a text predictor which is learning from all of the open internet. Yeah, that's what large language models are. And just like your phone, which would tell you to write, if you wrote hi, how are you? What happened here? If you wrote hi, how are you? Multiple times in a month, then every time you start writing hi, the next word prediction would be how. Yeah? That was entirely statistic. So if I wrote hi 30 times, out of which 20 times I followed it with how are you, then the next word prediction would be how. And then the click the screen back up. But in this case, before the screen comes up, what is different? The large language model can actually contextualize. How can it contextualize? Because it now just doesn't have your phone to learn from, it has the whole internet and multiple users asking it stuff. Yeah? And depending on what they select, it then decides how they want it to be answered. Yeah? And I'll give you another example of this. When you do Google searches, okay? Remember when in early days, maybe 10 years ago when you were doing a Google search, it was really hard. You search something and you will find maybe the relevant page on the 3rd page or 4th page of the results. But it changed about 10 years ago. You could now talk to Google. You could now talk to Google in pretty much sentences and it would show you the most relevant results. Because that's when Google implemented deep learning, machine learning into its search environment. Yeah? And this is an example. It's from one of our textbooks which teaches generative AI, and it shows what the generative AI tool does to predict the right kind of word. Yeah. So in this case, the prompt was to define in one sentence what generative AI is. So the generative AI was asked to define itself. And if you see each of the tokens or each of the words, you see that there is a different color. Yeah, some of them are green, which means they are statistically most prominent, like your hi and how in your previous version. But if you look at some of the words, they are lighter green or yellow or orange. We picked up one word which was orange, focuses, and we took a snapshot of that. The most common term statistically it was uses, but based on the other feedback that the system was given, it decided that focuses was a better sentence here. Now this is done based on dials set inside the model. Okay, what are dials? It basically tells the context that you can do. If you have access to the backend of GPT, not just chat, you can actually set them manually. But the chat function sets dials based on your experience with the chat function or the chat GPT or any other LLM, or other users like you who ask similar questions, their options. Yeah. So usually there were people who would ask the same question multiple times, and then based on what they picked, it decides, oh, this is what they want. In simple language, if you see explain generative AI in one sentence, it sounds like an exam question, right? Or an assignment question. So it changes the language to contextualize it in the way an exam question would be answered, right? Also looks at your profile, right? What are you using? What are the other apps you're using? So when you start to use ChatGPT or any other app, you give it a lot of permissions. So it gets a lot of data points from the other apps you're using on your device. Based on that, also it generates context. But if we are working in the playground in the backend, we can actually set the context we want. Now coming to AI and research, we did a survey a couple of years ago with authors of Nature articles. Okay? People who are based publishing in Nature. And one of the things that we pointed out to them, this was the initial document, one of the things we pointed out to them is the growth in AI and ML being used as terms in titles and abstracts of research articles. So you see, this is tracking all the way from 1983. Computer science, of course, was a field that was doing research in this, so they had papers in that area. The others were non-existent, pretty much. But we saw from 2013, pretty much every field started talking about AI and ML in their research. So AI and ML became important to researchers as tools. When we talk to researchers, we ask them a question about positive impacts of AI in their, and this is all of AI in their research. It's not only large language models. It could be machine learning tools, it could be other AI tools that they use. And the top reasons why researchers like to use AI tools is speed. Yeah, it speeds up the processes. Sometimes it also brings in things that we are not capable of doing as human beings because it's too much man-hours. I think in the other room just now, somebody was showing a slide about drug discovery. Drug discovery is a field which has been hugely positively impacted by AI and machine learning. Because what would take humans probably of regular computing cycles, probably years to do, can now be done in minutes. Okay? Same with some other fields of research. You probably know about digital twins. And digital twins highly rely on machine learning models or what we call AI models. So these were the good impacts, but we also asked people, what are the negative impacts? Okay? And researchers themselves, this is you guys, not us, told us that it leads to more reliance on pattern recognition from the machine without understanding. Okay? Here I also want to bring in one more thing, which is the recent study by MIT on the impact of using large language models or ChatGPT on the brain. If you haven't read this, please read it. I am not showing it in my slides right now because the paper is not yet published, it's still in print and review. But if you get a chance, go back and read it. They did an experiment with high school students and made them write essays using and not using ChatGPT, and they saw that the groups that were using ChatGPT did not absorb any of what they were supposed to be writing. They also saw a significant amount of degeneration in neural links, what we call cognitive debt, and when they were taken away, they were weaned off ChatGPT and told to write themselves, even something else, they couldn't do it. Okay? And it doesn't take a long time. This experiment ran for I think 60 days. So if you've been using ChatGPT to write everything for you, stop doing that. Yeah? Because it will rot your brain. Okay. Now we come to actually generative AI. So those were questions about all kinds of AI. These are about generative AI. What are the problems that generative AI may lead to if you use them in research? Again, this is not us, this is your own peers telling you. It will proliferate misinformation. Yeah? There is something called hallucinations in generative AI. If you are not familiar with the term, I suggest you go and Google it. Usually I will give you a little experiment, but I don't have time for that today. But I'll give you one example. Okay? So one reason why a lot of researchers use generative AI is to write code. It makes writing code much faster, right? It just takes away many man-hours of work. So I have a friend who is a very senior data scientist. He is an MSc in mathematics from IIT Kanpur, integrated MSc from IIT Kanpur. He and his team, which is also pretty much full of IITs, they just sit and make sense of very, very large data sets. Yeah? And they write Python codes to run on top of these data sets. So one day they decided, instead of writing the code themselves, they are going to ask Gen AI to do it. And they asked ChatGPT. The code came out, and we are not talking about little segments of code. This is like pages and pages of code. Yeah? It would have taken a human being about 3 to 4 hours of work to write that code. GPT did it 3 to 4 minutes. Okay? Now we try to compile the code. The code is not compiled. It took 7 of those IIT guys 7 hours to figure out why the code would compile. They checked the code line by line. The syntax was fine, the punctuation was fine, everything was fine. Finally, one of them caught on that the libraries defined at the beginning of the code do not exist in Python. They were made up. Yeah? GPT made them up. So you have to be very careful with what it's churning out. Because hallucinations are a part of this tool. Okay? I'll give you another example of what I think LLMs are. Okay? Now, let's say you guys, all of you, English is not your first language, right? So let's say you meet a 3-year-old kid who grew up in Cambridge, okay? And you're speaking to the kid, and he or she is talking to you, and you're very impressed with the kid because they're speaking perfect English, perfect accent, perfect grammar. What's your first thought about this child? Smart. Such a smart kid. Kid is not smart. The kid just speaks their language properly. Yeah. You talk to your own child. I mean, when the kid is responding perfectly, you never think it's smart, right? You think that kid is smart because they are speaking a language which you are not at, a very at par with, or it took you a lot of effort to get to that level. Yeah. So you think a 3-year-old doing this is a big feat, but it's actually not. It's just learning language. What do 3-year-olds do when they're learning language? They talk a lot. Yeah. They talk a lot and they make up stories. So ChatGPT is a 3-year-old. Came out in November 2022. Not even 3 years. It's a toddler. Yeah. So these are language models. They are built for languages. They're built for doing linguistic things. So programming languages as well. Sometimes they're good with simple things like calculations, but not all things. I don't have this on my slide, but I have a screenshot from GPT-5 from one of my physicist friends in the US. Simple linear equation was asked to be solved. Yeah. And the final subtraction to be done in the simple linear equation was 1.9 minus 1.11. Okay. Did you guys do the subtraction in your head? What is it? What is your answer? 0.79. Yeah. 0.79. You know what ChatGPT's answer was? 0.21 minus 0.21, whatever. It was the other way around. So minus 0.21, it should be minus 0.79. But because it doesn't even know how to count decimal places. Okay? It's not, it's subtracting after the decimal place, 9 minus 11. Instead of doing 9, 0 minus 11. Yeah? I have actual screenshots of this. I can show them to you. I don't have it on the slide deck yet.
So viral in social media.
Yeah, it is viral in social media. Yeah. So I have the actual screenshot because when it went viral, one of my friends actually did it. Again. And it still didn't learn. Right? So it's even doing wrong math. So be careful of what you're using it for. If you thought I was going to encourage you to use AI in this talk, you thought wrong. Okay. Then I want you to focus on one more thing here because I don't have a lot of time to really go into all the details. Researchers say it may entrench bias. Okay? Bias, not only social bias, although I'm going to show you an example of social bias, but bias in data. If your data itself is biased. Another example. A couple of years ago, a big tech giant, okay, one of the top 5 American companies, I'm not going to name names, they automated their hiring process. Okay, they included a machine learning generative AI model to shortlist CVs that come for job applications. And after a few months, their HR people realized that only men's CVs were being shortlisted, women's CVs were not being shortlisted. They're like, what's going on? Then they started looking deeper into it. And what was the learning from? It was learning from previous hiring decisions. And we know how bad US deep tech is in hiring women, right? It's a big issue. So at some point, the model, which learns itself and it teaches itself, decided this data set of shortlisted and hired women was so small, it could be completely ignored to make the process more efficient. Yeah? You know how you exclude data when you are looking at results that, oh, this is just insignificant. So the AI model was like, oh, this is just insignificant. Let's just ignore it. And for 6 months, they were just getting well series. And it took them 6 months to realize it. After that, of course, they decommissioned the algorithm. They made a press release about it, and they apologized, and then they actually had to do rehiring of certain positions, which were already closed. Yeah. To give a more equitable hiring. 1 minute. So I don't have time for everything, but I am going to show you bias. Okay? This is a tool, it's not ChatGPT. It's a tool which generates images based on global prompts. Okay? It's called stable diffusion. I like playing around with it a lot with my bias studies. So on the left, prompt was picture of children going to school in Guatemala. Okay? And this was done last month. You see, they don't have shoes. Okay? And I did this about 2 years ago also. At that time, they were going to school on an elephant. Yeah? And pictures to the children going to school in Liverpool. Liverpool, if you know the demographics of the UK, is pretty much populated by a South Asian population. Yeah? And children going to school in Liverpool are apparently mostly white. Yeah? Same, another prompt from Stable Diffusion. I asked them 2 times to show me the picture of a surgeon based in London. And every time I got a middle-aged white guy, suspiciously looks like one of my colleagues, I don't know. In both cases, yeah. But again, this is a demographic fact that we know about the UK, that most of the doctors in the UK are either from India or Pakistan. Yeah. So where is this coming from? This is biased data or misinformation, which could also come from fiction, from TV, from novels, from anything like that. That doctors in London are always, and I have done this multiple times, multiple hundreds of times, for predominantly Western countries, every time a doctor is a man, white man. Okay, and I've been doing this for the last 3 years since these tools came out. It hasn't changed. That's baked bias. Final word of advice, do not use, when you're looking at research and publishing, do not use generative AI to generate figures, images, or data. Always declare your use, find out what is allowed, what is not allowed, and never use it to generate peer reviews. I'm going to stop here because we are down in time, but I'm happy to answer your questions, and if you guys want to come to your institute and do the 1-hour version of this, I'm happy to do that as well. Thank you.